At 75, Carol had lived a full life. She had raised 2 children, worked as a school teacher for decades, and had a strong circle of friends. But as the years passed, she began to feel the weight of time. Her children, now adults, were busy with their own families, and while she loved her home, she realized it was becoming too large and empty. The daily tasks of maintaining her house began to feel like burdens, and she struggled with loneliness. After months of contemplation, Carol made a decision that would change her life. She chose to move into a retirement home, thinking it might provide the companionship and care she needed in her later years. But the thought of leaving her beloved home was not easy. She had so many memories tied to every corner of the house, the garden, and the familiar streets she had walked for decades. Still, deep down, she knew it was the right step to take. Her children, although supportive, were hesitant at first, unsure about the idea of their mother moving into a retirement home. But Carol reassured them, telling them that this would be a fresh start. She had heard so many stories of older adults finding peace and a renewed sense of purpose in such communities. Packing up her belongings, Carol felt a mixture of emotions: sadness for leaving behind her old life, but also a spark of hope for what lay ahead. It wasn't just about moving to a new place, it was about embracing change and starting a new chapter. Little did she know, this decision would teach her more than she ever expected. The first few days at the retirement home were filled with uncertainty. Carol had imagined a quiet, peaceful environment where she could relax, read, and meet new people. However, she didn't anticipate the overwhelming feelings of isolation that she would experience at first. The building was large, and the hallways seemed endless. Everyone appeared to know each other already, and Carol felt like an outsider. But, as the days passed, Carol started to notice small things that made the place feel more like home. The friendly faces of the staff who greeted her each morning, the small garden outside her window that she could tend to, and the cozy common areas where residents gathered for coffee and conversations. Slowly, Carol began to build connections. She started talking to others during meals and discovered that many of them had similar feelings of loss and adjustment. They too had left behind homes filled with memories. One afternoon, she met Margaret, a woman in her 80s who had been living in the retirement home for a few years. Margaret was full of life and had a warm smile that immediately put Carol at ease. They struck up a conversation, and Margaret shared her own experience of moving in. "It wasn't easy at first, but over time, I found new friends, and my world opened up," she said. "It's not about what we left behind. It's about what we can still gain." Carol found comfort in Margaret's words. She realized that while it was natural to feel a sense of loss, there was also much to be gained from this new chapter. For the first time since moving in, Carol felt a glimmer of excitement for what was to come. As the weeks went by, Carol's new life started to feel more comfortable. She joined activities at the retirement home, from book clubs to painting classes, and began making friends who shared similar interests. One morning, she decided to attend a weekly exercise class for seniors. At first, she felt nervous. The idea of exercising in front of others felt intimidating. But once the class began, Carol found herself enjoying the movements, the laughter, and the encouragement from the instructor. What surprised her the most was how much her body responded to the exercise. Her energy levels increased, and the stiffness she had been feeling in her joints began to fade. Carol realized that her body, even at 75, was still capable of so much. She just had to give it the attention it deserved. She became a regular at the exercise class and even started going for walks in the beautiful grounds of the retirement community. The physical benefits were evident, But it was the emotional and mental clarity she gained that truly amazed her. For the first time in a long while, Carol felt alive and engaged in her own life. Beyond physical activity, Carol found new joy in the relationships she was building. She and Margaret started having regular coffee dates and enjoyed talking about their lives. Carol discovered that despite the challenges of aging, she could still find joy in companionship and shared experiences. She learned that being part of a community didn't mean giving up her independence. It meant learning to lean on others when needed and offering support in return. It was a delicate balance, but one that Carol was slowly beginning to understand. Carol's life in the retirement home began to feel like a second chance. She had gained a renewed sense of purpose. She started volunteering at the community library, helping to organize books for the residents. Carol had always loved reading and sharing stories, and this new role gave her a way to contribute to the community. It wasn't just about books, it was about creating connections. She began noticing how many residents looked forward to her little talks about the books they'd read, the characters they loved, and the stories that touched their hearts. For Carol, these moments were incredibly fulfilling. She had never realized how much she missed sharing her love for literature with others until she started doing it again. In the evenings, Carol would often sit in the cozy lounge area with her new friends. They would share stories of their youth, their families, and the paths they had walked to get to this place. These moments of connection were something Carol had longed for. She realized that while she had left behind her home, she had gained a new family here. The residents, though much older, had vibrant stories and memories that she found endlessly fascinating. They had lived through different times, but their lives were full of wisdom and resilience, and Carol knew that there was so much she could learn from them. But Carol's transformation wasn't just about the friendships she had formed or the activities she now enjoyed. It was about something deeper, the emotional healing she was experiencing. The grief from losing her husband many years ago had been a heavy burden she carried for so long. The loneliness that followed had become her constant companion, leaving her feeling isolated even in a crowded room. But now, with each passing day, she was learning to open her heart again. She found comfort in the gentle conversations, the shared laughter, and the sense of belonging she had never imagined she'd find in a retirement home. She discovered that it wasn't about letting go of the past. It was about creating a future with the wisdom and experience she had. There were days when the memories of her old life brought tears to her eyes, but they no longer consumed her. Carol realized that while she could never fully replace the life she had left behind, she could still build a beautiful one in the present. The pain of loss no longer held the same weight. It had transformed into something that allowed her to appreciate the beauty of the here and now. One of the greatest challenges Carol had faced when first moving into the retirement home was the fear of losing her independence. She had always been an independent woman, making decisions for herself, living alone, and managing her own life. The idea of living in a place where everything was structured and provided for her felt like giving up control. But over time, she began to redefine what independence meant to her. Carol realized that independence wasn't about doing everything on her own or rejecting help when it was offered. It was about being in charge of her own choices, no matter where she lived. At first, the structured meals and scheduled activities felt limiting. But then, she began to see them as opportunities to choose how she spent her time, what activities she wanted to engage in, and how she could contribute to the community. Carol started taking full advantage of the opportunities offered to her, joining the knitting circle, attending exercise classes, and even helping organize social events for other residents. She had become more involved in the retirement home's community than she ever imagined possible. Her new outlook on independence allowed Carol to embrace life in the retirement home with a sense of agency. She had learned that being dependent on others in certain ways didn't mean she had lost her autonomy. It meant she had learned to accept help without feeling diminished. Her independence had evolved into a deeper understanding of how to balance self-sufficiency with the richness that came from being part of a supportive community. Carol's new definition of independence wasn't about being alone. It was about being fully present and engaged in her life, regardless of where she lived. As months passed, Carol found herself embracing a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The adjustment to retirement living hadn't been easy, but with time, patience, and a willingness to embrace change, Carol had not only found a place she could call home, but a sense of fulfillment and joy that she thought had long passed her by. She had learned to accept the parts of her life that were no longer in her control: the loss of loved ones, the aging process, and the changes that came with it. But instead of feeling defeated, Carol had found peace in acceptance. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch of the retirement home, looking out at the garden she had helped plant, Carol reflected on how far she had come. She remembered her first days at the home, feeling unsure, hesitant, and even a little fearful about what the future would hold. Now, the fear had been replaced by a sense of comfort and contentment. She had discovered that peace wasn't found in the absence of change or loss. It was found in the ability to move forward, to adapt, and to find joy in the simple things. Carol had come to realize that her life was still hers to shape. The days of working, raising children, and tending to a home may have passed, but that didn't mean her life was over. It had simply taken a new direction. Every day she woke up, she had the chance to make new memories, form new friendships, and embrace whatever came her way. For Carol, this was the true gift of the present moment. Her story wasn't one of loss, but of renewal. Carol had moved into the retirement home expecting to find a place of rest and quiet. Instead, she had found a new chapter, full of opportunities for connection, growth, and self-discovery. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Carol now felt like she had entered a new phase of her life, a phase where she could truly enjoy each day without the weight of past regrets holding her down. She had come to terms with the reality of aging and the changes that came with it, but instead of allowing these changes to define her, she embraced them as part of her journey. She found joy in knowing that life didn't stop just because you got older. She continued to cultivate her relationships, explore new hobbies, and challenge herself to try new things. One of her proudest achievements was finally finishing a novel she had always wanted to write. Over the years, Carol had started and stopped many times, telling herself that there was no point. But in the retirement home, she found the time and encouragement she needed to complete the book. It wasn't a bestseller, but it was hers, a story of her life, her lessons, and the wisdom she had gained over the years. Carol knew that the road ahead might bring more challenges, as life often does, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them with grace and courage. The retirement home had become a place of transformation for her, where she had discovered a new version of herself, one that was not bound by age or circumstance, but fueled by purpose, love, and acceptance. And with that, Carol stepped confidently into the future, ready for whatever it had in store. As we come to the end of Carol's journey, we are reminded that life doesn't stop at any age. It evolves. Carol's story shows us that it's never too late to embrace change, seek new connections, and find joy in the simplest moments. The decision to move into a retirement home was not just about seeking comfort, but about making room for a life that could still be full of purpose, growth, and discovery. Through Carol's experience, we've seen that aging doesn't have to be synonymous with loss. Instead, it can be a chance to reinvent oneself, to build new relationships, and to redefine what it means to live fully. Carol's courage to embrace this new chapter has not only enriched her own life, but has touched the lives of those around her. Whether it's taking up new hobbies, connecting with others, or simply finding peace with the passage of time, Carol's story is a powerful reminder that each day is a new opportunity. It's not about what we've lost, but about what we're willing to gain, no matter where we are in life. Thank you for joining us on Carol's inspiring journey. Her story proves that no matter our age, we all have the power to change, to grow, and to continue living with joy and purpose. Remember, it's never too late to begin a new chapter, and the best is yet to come.